All right, let's set the scene. Picture this. It's Shanghai, October 1937. In the middle of a massive, brutal war, a single battle for one building is about to become a global spectacle, played out on a public stage for the whole world to see.
You see, the huge 3-month-long Battle of Shanghai is pretty much over. The Chinese army is pulling back, they're in full retreat, but just as the city is about to fall, one battalion gets this insane order. You don't retreat, you stay. You make one final desperate stand, right here in this warehouse.
Now, this is what makes this whole situation so wild. Look at the location. The warehouse is deep in the war zone, right? But just across that little creek, we're talking only 60 yards of water, is the international settlement. This was a neutral zone, packed with foreign diplomats, journalists, and Chinese civilians. They could literally stand on their balconies and watch this battle unfold like it was some kind of bizarre spectator sport.
So that raises the big question. Why, right? Why order a few hundred men to hold one building when your entire army is retreating? It looks like a complete suicide mission. But as it turns out, this was all part of a much bigger, calculated plan.
The goal here wasn't a military victory. It was a performance. Chiang Kai-shek knew the world was watching from just across the river, and he needed to show them, especially the Western powers, that China was not going down without a fight. He needed a symbol of defiance, something to rally morale at home, and maybe, just maybe, win some international help. This wasn't about winning the battle, it was about winning the story.
And just look at the odds they were up against. I mean, it's staggering. The Chinese had a single battalion, and it wasn't even at full strength, about 414 soldiers. They were facing off against more than 1,200 of Japan's elite naval infantry, who also had artillery and tanks. It was completely lopsided.
And this is the guy who had to pull it all off. Lieutenant Colonel Xie Jinyuan. He was the one given the impossible task of turning this hopeless military situation into a powerful symbol of courage for the entire world.
So, the stage was set. Let's get into the play-by-play of the intense, day-by-day struggle for this one building.
Okay, so here's the quick rundown. The Chinese soldiers move in on October 26th and start digging in. For the next 6 days, they're going to hold out against everything the Japanese throw at them, and all of it is happening in full view of thousands of spectators.
The Japanese start their push on October 27th. They figured the area was clear, so their first attacks were pretty casual. They thought they were just mopping up. Instead, they walked right into a buzzsaw of disciplined fire pouring out of this fortified warehouse. It caught them completely off guard.
And this is just brilliant. The Chinese defenders used the building's height to their advantage. The Japanese soldiers would try to hug the thick concrete walls to find cover, creating a blind spot. So the Chinese soldiers just climbed up to the roof and started dropping grenades and mortar rounds straight down on them. It was a brutally simple and incredibly effective tactic.
And you know what? The world was absolutely captivated. This quote from an American journalist says it all. People weren't just seeing a small battle. They were seeing a legendary last stand, a modern-day Alamo. This was exactly the kind of press Chiang Kai-shek had been hoping for. So what was the real toll of the fighting? Well, that really depends on who you ask. Chinese and Western journalists were reporting over 100, maybe 200 Japanese killed. But the official Japanese records? They claimed only 3 or 4 fatalities. It's a perfect example of the fog of war, where the propaganda war becomes just as fierce as the real one.
But beyond the actual fighting, 2 key things happened that would transform this defense from just a military action into a powerful national legend that would inspire an entire country for years to come.
First up, that name that became famous all across China, the 800 heroes. Sounds amazing, right? But was it actually true?
Nope. The real number of defenders was just 414. So where did the number 800 come from? Well, this was just a brilliant bit of psychological warfare from Commander Xie. He reported his unit's original full-strength number of 800 men to the outside world. This made his force seem almost twice as large, which not only confused the Japanese, but, more importantly, created a much more powerful and inspiring story for the Chinese people. And the second key event? It came from a totally unexpected hero, a young civilian woman. This is Yang Hu-min. She was a girl guide, and watching the battle from across the river, she noticed something very important was missing from the skyline. She saw all these Japanese flags going up over the city, but not a single Chinese flag.
So, she volunteered for what has to be one of the most dangerous missions imaginable, to personally carry a huge Republic of China flag across a live, active battlefield and get it to the defenders inside the warehouse.
And on the morning of October 29th, the defenders hoisted that very flag up on a makeshift pole made of 2 bamboo stalks lashed together. Can you imagine the sight? For the tens of thousands of Chinese spectators watching from the safe zone, it was electrifying. It was this huge boost to their morale, and for the Japanese, it was an infuriating symbol of defiance. They immediately opened fire on it, but they failed to bring it down.
So after 4 days of non-stop fighting, with the world's attention firmly grabbed, the Chinese High Command decided, okay, mission accomplished. It was time to bring the defense to a close.
You see, the foreign powers in the settlement were getting really nervous about the fighting being so close. They pressured the Chinese government to end it, and Chiang Kai-shek agreed. The propaganda goals had been met, he ordered a withdrawal. Now, Commander Xi, he wanted to fight to the last man, and he actually refused the order at first. But he was eventually convinced that it was more important to preserve his veteran troops. You have to understand, this wasn't a surrender, it was a strategic retreat.
The defenders slipped out under the cover of darkness and into the international settlement. They didn't hold the ground, but then again, that was never the real mission. What they left behind was this battered building, with that flag still flying, which had become a powerful symbol of Chinese resistance that no one could ignore.
And that was their true victory. The performance was a resounding success. The story of the 800 heroes of Sihang Warehouse became a national legend, a rallying cry that provided incredible inspiration throughout the long, brutal years of war that were still to come.
Which really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. In the grand calculus of a long and brutal war, how important is something like this? Can a symbolic victory, one that strengthens a nation's spirit and its will to fight, be just as important, maybe even more so, than a victory won on the actual battlefield?